Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
How is the COVID-19 crisis impacting the cattle business? We'll talk with NCBA President Marty Smith, and we'll share insights on cattle market changes. Plus, advice on controlling parasites in your herd.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxter, and I'm coming to you once again from our home operation here in Kersey, Colorado. As the COVID-19 crisis continues its devastating impact on our economy and our industry, it's clear that leadership, cooperation, and transparency have never been more critically important. That's why I've been encouraged to see Florida Cattlemen and NCBA President Marty Smith representing our interests and concerns in a number of media and news outlets. In addition, he's been updating NCBA members as the economic impact of this crisis continues to worsen. And joining us now from Florida is NCBA President Marty Smith. Marty, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin.
Tell us a little bit about the conversation you had with President Trump and the support that he's offered U.S. cattle producers during this time of crisis.
Last week, I was able to participate on a direct telephone conference, not only with President Trump, but also Vice President Pence, Secretary Sonny Perdue, and talk specifically about the issues facing cattle producers, facing farmers and ranchers around the United States. We were one of the few ag groups on that call, and actually had a second call that same day that was led by Vice President Pence, and he asked very specifically of me and of NCBA what's going on with cattle producers and what the administration can do to help.
Very good. And can you tell us just a little bit about what President Trump and his administration have done for cattle producers during this crisis?
First, and this was what led to this call last week, was the president's executive order to get our packing plants back up and going and keep them operating during some very challenging and tough times for us. Certainly, we've gotten the president's support with the CARES package, and we're waiting to hear some more details out of that. Back in toward the end of March, I'd actually sent a letter to President Trump with a copy to Secretary Perdue. Great thing about that, 6 hours after the letter was delivered to the White House, NCBA was getting calls from both the White House and from USDA following up on the points that we were raising. We were asking them to look at the disparity in prices between our fed cattle prices and box beef prices, which they are doing, and pledging to us the support of the White House, of the administration, to help farmers and ranchers through this current crisis.
It is a crisis, and it seems to be a very strange situation we find ourselves in right now, where we have more than adequate supplies of cattle, and yet meat is becoming harder and harder to come by in grocery stores. Why is it so important to keep the supply chain moving during this time?
Well, first and foremost, Kevin, we're talking about feeding the United States of America. And we're talking about getting our product, getting beef into their hands. Now, you look for a bright side in this, and it's very hard to find one, but the best thing about that we've seen here is the fact that beef is in such high demand. Go into a grocery store, look, see the empty shelves there where the beef has been taken off the shelf. See what's going on with the takeout food. Beef is in high demand. A lot of the work that we've done through the years with our checkoff program, work that NCBA and others have done to build that beef demand, is really in a position to pay off for us. So we want to keep that supply chain going. Number one, we got to feed the United States. To a large degree, we feed the world. And so we've got to keep that going. In addition to that, really a bigger, more direct problem for all of us in production cattle is the fact that our packing plants are backing up, feed yards are getting overcrowded, and we need an outlet for them. just before this call today, I've been on the phone trying to move some cattle that are in the feed yard and ready to go. And it's not the easiest thing to do right now. In fact, it's pretty dadgum tough. And of course, the prices that we're talking about are even tougher. So keeping that supply chain going is really, really critical to our entire industry.
It's certainly encouraging to have producers like yourself and the rest of the executive team who really understand what all of us are going through. And so I'd ask one last question. What message do you have to all of us in the cattle industry who are experiencing a high degree of stress and uncertainty right now?
You know, we have been through a lot of tough times before as an industry and as a group of producers. And you know, before this all came to pass, we were talking about, and I was talking about, let's work on our teamwork. Let's work together. There's a lot of problems out there that we face as an industry. There's a lot of problems that we face on our individual ranches and feed yards, and let's focus on those, but let's focus on working together towards solutions. We're tough people. We face crises regularly. We face challenges. This one's a huge one for us. We know that. But we will work together. We're starting to see maybe a little bit of relief. We're hoping to see restaurants open back up. That's a big factor. We got to get people back working again. That was part of what the president was talking about in this executive order. Get the people in the packing plants back working. Let's get America back going again, and let's be a part of that solution. And I think we will be, Kevin.
Thank you so much. I know this is an enormous load on your shoulders and your officer team's shoulders. And let me tell you, from one producer to another, we greatly appreciate all the time you're spending to try to lead the beef industry forward in this challenging circumstance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And to anybody that's listening to this, understand that the officers, the executive committee of NCBA, it's made up of producers just like me and you. From all parts of the country, all sizes of operation, and that's who we work for. We work for cow-calf producers, the feed yards, the people that are growing the cattle and putting the beef on people's plates. We're not there to try to, we get a lot of criticism about the packer. We're trying to deal with that, but that's not our focus. Our focus is production, and it's on the cow-calf and the feed yard operators from all parts of the country. We're going to keep doing that, Kevin.
We appreciate your service to our industry. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
For a good source of information on the COVID-19 situation, including opportunities to apply for small business assistance and view educational webinars, you can visit the website at ncba.org. And joining us now from Denver, Colorado is NCBA CEO Colin Woodall. Colin, thanks for taking a few minutes for us this evening.
It's great to be with you, Kevin.
So to begin with, tell us just a little bit about when we expect to know more about the CARES Act package that NCBA helped get passed through Congress.
So USDA has made it very clear that the Office of Management and Budget is doing a final review. So we do hope to have that as quickly as possible. Secretary Perdue has said that he hopes to have checks in producers' hands by the time we get to Memorial Day. So that's coming up pretty quick. So we are hoping that he is able to follow through on that, because we know there's a lot of need out there right now. And it's been almost a month and a half since the CARE Act was passed. We need to see this implemented, and we do have hope that we will see that here fairly soon.
Do you have any insights on what producers will need to know about the application process itself?
We don't have all the details yet, but more than likely they're going to have to go to their local farm service agency, whether that's in person or online. We don't know yet, because a lot of that has to do county by county, in some cases state by state. But one thing that I would tell all of our viewers right now, if you're going to take advantage of this program, make sure that you have good records. Put them in some sort of document, whether that's a spreadsheet file or a Word document file. Make sure it's not on the back of an envelope. You're going to need to have some good, strong files to take with you that just give a history of what your marketing plans would have been, what those losses are, so that way you don't have to come back to that FSA office time and time again.
Let's talk packing plants. Give us an update on where we stand with America's packing plants since the executive order that President Trump issued to keep them operating and running. And what does it mean, Colin, to the backlog of fat cattle we have building up in the country?
The executive order was a big win for us, and we're very thankful for the president and his effort in invoking the Defense Production Act on these packers. And what we have seen in the almost 2 weeks now since that was put in place is that the local governments and the whims of local governments have not been able to sway the decisions on closing these packing plants down as much as they were. We have a more standardized approach. And USDA has come forward in their role as part of this executive order in making sure that the CDC guidance is being followed, because we have to keep in mind that we have to protect these workers. If we don't have these workers in these plants, we can keep them open all day long and we still won't be able to process the cattle that we need to be able to process. So this is about making sure that all the efforts are in place to protect the workers, and the guidance makes it very clear that once we implement those suggestions, then we can have workers who are safe and still able to disassemble those carcasses. And that's what we're going after. And we do hope that we will see by the end of the week a turn in this issue, and hopefully seeing much more capacity and being able to process those cattle that you talked about that are backing up because we just can't get them in the plants.
Yep, fair statement, and thank you for all the efforts. What about beef supply? Gosh, we're reading reports right now where some supermarkets are limiting the amount of beef that consumers can purchase, and some fast food restaurants are finding themselves in periods of shortfall. Can we assure consumers that there is an ample supply of beef, or what should our message be?
We feel very comfortable in letting our consumers know that we don't have a nationwide shortage of beef. We are producing beef every single day, because even though these plants are not running at 100%, they're still running. So we are still harvesting cattle, and beef is getting into the pipeline. But we are seeing some local variances, in some cases some regional variances. Give you a great example here in the Denver metro area. You can have a store that is out of beef, and then just 6 blocks away you'll have a store that has a fully stocked meat case. A lot of that depends upon the distributors that they're using and overall logistics. So our message is, if by chance Wendy's doesn't have that hamburger today, check back with them tomorrow. If your local grocery store doesn't have any steaks in the meat case, check back with them tomorrow, because we still are producing beef.
And last question for you. I understand that you had some time on Rural America Live the other evening. I'm curious to know, it was a call-in show. What were some of the primary questions and concerns you were hearing from callers?
Well, we're very thankful to RFD TV for giving us the opportunity to be a part of Rural America Live. It's a weekly show that they have, and it's a call-in show, and we got to hear from producers across the country. And they had various questions, but I think the biggest question on most everybody's mind is, what are we going to do with the markets? What are we going to do with these markets? Everybody's asking that question. What are we going to do with these markets? We formed a cattle marketing working group made up of NCBA members, producers. We formed that during our annual convention in San Antonio. They had their first face-to-face meeting in early March before the COVID crisis broke. And throughout the crisis, they have had phone calls to talk about what's going on in the marketplace. They are looking at different options, different ideas, and really that focus of taking our leverage back as producers and taking that leverage away from the packers. The idea is to have some ideas that can be debated and voted on during our summer business meeting in July here in Denver. But we also have to remind everybody that a portion of this market discussion goes back to the investigation that we requested the president take on in telling the Department of Justice and USDA to look at the cattle markets. That is happening, and I do believe that once that is done, which we have requested, they get it done very quickly. I think when those results come out, that will also be something we can factor in here to try to have a new course when it comes to cattle marketing that definitely makes sure that we're getting all the value that we deserve for the animals that we work so hard to produce.
That's really encouraging news. And I guess the other question I would ask is, for folks that have ideas, thoughts, concepts, they would like this committee or others to consider, what is their avenue to get that information to you all?
A couple of different avenues. First, go to your local state cattlemen's association. Those that are affiliated with NCBA, you're going to have a direct conduit into what we're doing, but also contact us. You're going to see our phone number multiple times throughout the show. Use that phone number not only to sign up to be a member, but to talk about some of the ideas that you have, and go to our website, because you can also submit ideas and suggestions through our website. So we have multiple ways to get in touch with us. and we welcome that feedback.
Very good. Colin, thank you for spending time with us, and thank you for all you and the rest of your staff and volunteer leaders are doing to help us weather this storm. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
To get involved with NCBA and learn more about the policies and issues that affect your cattle business, why not become a member? There are great incentives to do so, including a free 2.5 liter bottle of EPRA Zero from Norbrook for all new NCBA members. To join, just call 866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. Still to come, we'll see how U.S. beef exports are performing so far this year. And next, we'll have insights on calls to change the cattle marketing system. Stay with us. There's more of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen just ahead.
Grass is the center of our universe. So everything revolves around that. We've got to have a grass program that we can count on and plan on. What we need is an effective herbicide that can kill the weeds. That's what we need to sustain us, to keep us growing, to keep us prospering. We grow our own cows. We like selling them, not buying them. I'm Tommy Brandenberger, and along with my wife, we're cow-calf producers.
And welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Russell Nemitz. Well, as the COVID-19 pandemic has made its impact on cattle markets, some have called for drastic changes to our beef supply chain and cattle pricing. Now, one of those who has worked to offer a balanced perspective here of late on the current market challenges and the way forward is Oklahoma State University's ag economist, Dr. Darrell Peel, who joins us now here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. And Dr. Peel, in an opinion piece for Drovers, you told cattle producers to be careful what you wish for in terms of changes to the cattle marketing system. Can you please explain what you meant by that?
Well, I think there's a couple things, Russell. First of all, this is a very complex industry. There's lots of issues that we've been monitoring for years and years that we continue to, and there's certainly some things that we want to continue to work on. That said, we're in the middle of the most unprecedented thing that's ever happened, not only to the cattle industry or ag markets in general, but to our entire economy and indeed the global economy. So, I think this is a time when obviously there's so many challenges, so much stress and frustration and anger, frankly, that, this is a time to, it's a time to be really careful when you start thinking about changing things that could have very long run implications for the industry.
Very well said. Right now, there's also currently a lot of debate about various solutions on different marketing options, and understandably, emotions are running high, but we can't lose sight of the sound science and data in making changes, correct? What's your advice to producers working to offer different solutions, including government-mandated ones?
Well, again, there's lots of issues in this industry. And certainly we continue to look at those. We do have a lot of science. These issues have been researched for years. They've been monitored by, agricultural economists and others. And we do have a lot of things to go on. So I think it's important to tread carefully here. I guess my main message for cattlemen is always to make sure you really understand why things work the way they work. How did we get to this point? And what are the reasons for that? We may want to change some things ultimately, that's fine, but we need to understand why we do what we do and make sure we understand the implications of trying to do something different. I think that's particularly true in the cattle industry when we start talking about mandated kinds of changes or
any sort of restrictions that really tie the hands of the way we do business in this cattle industry. And so we want to, we want to really think about not only what the issues are that need addressed, perhaps, how we might want to change those, and also consider maybe a wider range of alternatives than just jumping to a simple mandated kind of an approach.
Well, certainly this COVID-19 national emergency has brought a lot of new headlines to all of us in the U.S. beef cattle industry here of late. With the difference between boxed beef prices and the prices producers are receiving, what's your perspective on the situation the COVID-19 crisis has created right now?
Well, again, I think one of the things that has happened here, obviously these markets are being challenged in ways we've never seen before. And so we're seeing market reactions that we've never seen before. And for a lot of people, they look very surprising, perhaps suspicious in some ways. In fact, my approach as an ag economist is that most of what we're seeing is the market dealing with things the way markets actually work. It's very consistent with the way that I understand markets work. And so it's out of the norm. Markets normally do what they do so well and so efficiently and so subtly that we don't think about these things. So, we're seeing some changes in apparent price spreads, but we've got lots of unusual things going on out there with the volumes of trade that are happening, the kinds of pricing that's happening at the wholesale level as well as at the producer level. So there's just lots of issues out there. And again, sort of the simple, easy view of some of these things is perhaps a little bit too simplistic in some cases. We need to dig a little bit deeper.
And my last question for you, Dr. Peel. With packing plant closings and slowdowns and a backlog of cattle in the system, what words of advice or even encouragement for producers out there as they continue to weather this current situation?
Well, obviously, this is an enormously challenging time and with lots of issues for producers. This is not at all the year that we thought it was going to be when we started the year and we made our projections for cattle markets overall and beef markets and all kinds of issues. We've clearly got on a defensive mode, and that's really the best thing I can say for producers right now is that we have to be on the defense. We have to think about surviving this and make sure we get through this. It won't be a good year in many cases. But it's going to be a year we try to get through. We try to do what we have to survive. Once we get past some of these immediate issues, there's some real bright spots in the future at some point. I can't honestly say that I know exactly when that's going to happen, but it should take place. So, it's a matter of basically doing financial management to get through this year. Then we'll get back to thinking about marketing and producing more aggressively.
Very well said, my friend. Dr. Darrell Peel, we always appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us right here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
You're very welcome.
How are U.S. beef exports being affected by the global pandemic? Well, we'll have an update when we come back.
In the world of cattle vaccines, when you see fewer reactions, you'll notice healthier cattle and higher profits too. Because sometimes good protection is about what you don't see. Protect your productivity with cattle vaccines from Merck Animal Health. Proven to cause fewer reactions. You'll like what you see. Our trusted portfolio is just one more way Merck Animal Health works for you. Talk to your veterinarian and visit cattlefriendlyvaccines.com to learn more.
With the COVID-19 pandemic making an impact worldwide, you may be wondering just how U.S. beef exports have been affected. Well, through the first couple of months of 2020, U.S. beef exports were gaining ground, especially in Asian markets. In fact, total U.S. beef sales overseas were up 11% through the end of February. Now let's get the very latest information on beef trade from the CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Dan Hallstrom, who joins us from Denver today. And Dan, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Let's jump right into it. What's been happening here of late with U.S. beef exports as the COVID-19 crisis has deepened?
Yeah, thank you, Russell, and a pleasure to be here today. Yes, we're off to a good start in 2020 through 2 months. And just to give a little bit of history, 2019 turned out to be the second largest year ever for beef exports at about 8.1 billion in sales. Yeah, we're off to a very good start with all our major markets, honestly, Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, as well as Mexico. And it's exciting stuff because we expected it with Japan, but we got some other markets doing very well as well. The Japan-U.S. ag agreement was a big plus, and we're seeing dividends there. And in fact, we just finished our spring forecast for the year, and we're estimating to be up significantly for a new record in 2020 at approximately 8.6 billion in sales this year.
Dan, of course, we were set for a big opportunity to ship U.S. beef to China this year. Is the Chinese market showing any signs of picking up?
Yes, without a doubt. In fact, you look at China, and there's a few other countries, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and even Korea. They are exiting the eye of the storm in terms of COVID impact. We're seeing restaurants reopen, the food service business. It's not normal, but I like to say it's on the path back to normal. And so we're starting to see more activity there. And of course, the retail side, similar to what's happened in the US, the retail side's been booming. So yes, I think the China market in particular, but several of those other markets are showing a lot of promise, and demand is very, very good right now. So yeah, we're very optimistic, especially in Southeast Asia, going forward into the late spring and early summer.
Of course, Japan is still our #1 market for U.S. beef. What kind of progress are we making there since our most recent trade agreement gave us a more level playing field?
Yeah, this was the biggest news of 2019, in my opinion, for beef. Getting that Japan-U.S. ag agreement phase 1, which included agriculture, included beef, getting us on a level playing field on a couple of fronts, but the most important one being similar duty for the impound duty rate with our competition. So instead of being at a 13% disadvantage with Australia, we are even. So I think this is phenomenal news. When we get on an even playing field, U.S. beef will win. And we're already seeing through 2 months of statistics and a third one expected here soon. For the first quarter of this year, we will be up 10% or more into Japan. And the exciting thing about that is we're seeing progress in all segments. We're seeing it in, of course, the retail. We're seeing it on the e-commerce segment. We're seeing it even in institutional side of things. So between being on a level playing field and, of course, Australia at the moment's tight on numbers, those things combined, we're set up very well in Japan to make a big impact on regaining share in 2020.
And finally, Dan, with COVID-19, for most producers, the focus has mainly been on the U.S. markets. How has USMEF worked to adjust to the new realities in some other countries?
Well, I think it's like everyone's dealing with. We're in a new normal. To assume status quo is a big mistake. We are in a different time, a different age, so we have to be creative, we have to be innovative. And one of the areas we're seeing a lot of progress on, even at food service throughout the world, places like Korea, places like Mexico, is the online delivery platforms. And, a lot of these food service restaurant chains, we do a lot of business around the world on beef with them. They're adapting. They can't have any or minimal sit-down diners, so they're adapting to online platforms where we're delivering either takeout or you're delivering to the home, or actually the really interesting thing in China has been delivering to a common point or a common place that's outdoors. You have apartment buildings in Shanghai that might house 10,000 people. And they don't want a lot of delivery people walking through, these apartment complexes. So you have a common point outside, and a lot of delivery is to this common point. And it's all very easy. It's very much online. You order on your phone, and you can pick it up at the common point within an hour. So this is a sort of innovation that the new time that we're in has driven. And I think this sort of innovation will be here to stay. When we get back to normal, whatever normal will be, retail will continue to be strong, online will continue to be strong, and we will see a rebound in the food service on some levels. So I think we're set up very well for growth in the future.
All right, thanks a lot, Dan, for joining us here on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, and of course sharing your insight into how COVID-19 has impacted export markets and the opportunities that still exist.
Thank you, Russell. Pleasure.
To find out more about U.S. beef export trends and market opportunities, visit the website usmef.org. Well, there's more of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen coming up. Stay with us.
How's your production on pasture? Are profits down? Are weight gains down? What are you going to do about it? Do something cost-effective. Do something that will make a difference. To add the first and proven leader in feed-through horn fly control to your cattle rations, ask for it by name, Alticid IGR.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Lane Nordlund. Since 1968, the Public Lands Council has advocated on behalf of livestock producers who graze on federal lands. And today, over 20,000 ranchers run cattle and sheep on nearly 250 million acres of land managed by the U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management. Here to talk about the importance of unique challenges of public lands ranching is Wyoming native Caitlin Glover, Executive Director of the Public Lands Council and NCBA's Natural Resources. Caitlin, thanks for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, to start things off, could you just give a brief overview of the history of public lands grazing here in the United States?
Sure. Well, the history of grazing is as long as the history of the country itself and even before our establishment. Grazing is an integral tool in land management and forest management. But really the way we know grazing today began in the 1930s with the enactment of the Taylor Grazing Act. Now, it's important to remember that even though Congress passed and the President enacted the Taylor Grazing Act in 1934, the history of the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service goes back to the late 1800s and even the BLM's history goes back to the early 1800s. So this concept of federal engagement in public land management, public lands grazing has been around for quite some time. Now, over the years, since 1934, the Taylor Grazing Act has been evolved and changed through rules and regulations and even new bills passed in Congress. So the way we see grazing implemented today across federal lands is really a mix of what has evolved over time, those balances, those assessments. And the current scenario is a result of this change in management about 20 years ago during what we would call range reform, right? Many of us remember what that was like and how contentious it was. And it's so important and so timely, not only during this part of the year, during these months of the year for cattle and for sheep, but also because the Trump administration has started a process to revise those rules, to update those rules, bring them into current times and update them with current tools. So there's lots more context there, but that's really what we think about when we talk about public lands grazing, here in May 2020.
Caitlin, in the time of COVID-19, we are hearing a lot about USDA and news from the Small Business Administration, but the Department of Interior really plays a critical role in food and fiber production here in the U.S. What are some of the issues the Interior Department has been addressing recently, and could you talk more about how important that relationship that you have with the Department of Interior, you and your staff in Washington, D.C. as well?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the end of that question, and those relationships are critical. The Department of the Interior it houses a number of bureaus: the Bureau of Land Management, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Park Service, and so our relationships with them and with those bureaus is incredibly important. Of course, Forest Service is housed outside of the Department of the Interior, and so that takes some coordination. Those relationships are incredibly important as we move through any normal grazing season. Of course, this has not been a normal grazing season because of COVID-19 and coronavirus, and so when we talk about the adaptations that have needed to happen. The first bit of relationship got us through the door, got us access to those officials to say that these are the priorities of public lands grazers, of public lands ranchers, And these are the immediate needs that need to be met. Our first focus was access to allotments, making sure that folks could turn out on time and make sure that they had a timely place to put their cows and their sheep. The second part of that, of course, is as we move through those considerations, is wildfire season. And wildfire season will be upon us, or is upon us, more earlier than probably we would like it to be. And so having those conversations, making sure that those guidance documents filter from Washington down to the ground is incredibly important. And because of our relationships, because of our access here, we're able to make sure that our requests are included and those guidance documents are issued in a timely manner.
Caitlin, you brought up addressing those challenges that could face producers as we begin to turn out on those grazing allotments here this summer, but you also mentioned wildfire season, and the latest drought monitors show a lot of dry areas in the west and the Pacific Northwest. What are some challenges that we may see when it comes to COVID-19 and making sure that there are men and women able to fight these fires if they do occur this summer?
The predictive modeling that the National Interagency Fire Center put out as well. When we look at May, we look at June, but then by July of this year, a significant portion of the West is in that above normal risk potential for wildfires. Now, fire, of course, is a natural part of any ecosystem management. That's normal. But what we see is the buildup of those fine fuels that turn them from wildfires into catastrophic wildfires. That intensity and that speed is really the concern. Of course, all of that is a concern in a normal year, like all of these other things. But in the age of coronavirus, PLC has been working with the department and with the Forest Service to make sure that the seasonal personnel who are the core of most of these fire crews have the training that they're able to do this safely. Because in any scenario, we want to make sure that these men and women are safe on those fire lines. And in order to do that, to make sure that we have training, to make sure that we have mobile resources for both our fire crews, but also for our ranchers, and make sure that we have a strategy moving forward for deployment of those resources. Air quality is a discussion during fire season every year. And so this is a great opportunity for grazers to show their value. In any year, the grazing is valuable, but it helps to mitigate some of the smoke concerns that are even more concerning this year with coronavirus and those respiratory conditions.
Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us here today and giving us an update and an overview of the role that public lands ranchers play here in the United States.
Thanks for having me.
To find out more about the public lands ranching industry here in the United States and to keep up to date on all of these issues, just visit the website publiclandscouncil.org.
Coming up, we'll see how producers in Arkansas and Missouri are winning the fight against parasites in their cattle. You're watching NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, and we'll be right back.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll have access to key policy updates and insights from Beltway Beef. It's the best way to hear directly from NCBA's DC team. Beltway Beef provides valuable policy information, and it's free for NCBA members. Stay in touch with Beltway Beef. Join now at ncba.org.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattleman since 1921.
Raising cattle and combating parasites go hand in hand. However, producers don't have to sit back and let the parasites take what they want and rob cattle performance and profit potential. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has more on how cattle producers can win the fight against parasites.
Even though you can't see them, parasites are everywhere, and your cattle are picking them up. If there's grass and cattle grazing on it, there will be the need for parasite control.
We have every type of worm here in the Ozarks that there is. And anytime you run cattle behind cattle or on the ground, you're going to pick up parasites.
The most common parasite is a brown stomach worm, and that's the one everybody knows about. And the reason is because it's the most pathogenic. It can cause the most detrimental effects to cattle for many reasons. It damages the abomasum, it can cause anorexia or loss of appetite. If your cattle aren't eating, then they're definitely not going to gain weight. Parasites can really adversely affect reproduction in your heifers or your cows. Any kind of draw on an energy level, it takes a lot of energy to produce milk, it takes a lot of energy to reproduce. So when they're not at their maximum efficiency, it can have a very detrimental effect on reproductive ability.
A calf that's got full of parasites, number one, is not very healthy. So therefore, he's more likely to get sick on you, and then you're back into using expensive antibiotics. We want to keep the worms knocked out of these cattle so they'll perform at their maximum.
Treating animals with a dewormer can have a huge impact on your herd's health. That's why it's important to use the right product at the right time.
It's very important to treat parasites for many reasons. In your cow-calf herd, to treat your calves, your vaccines will work better because they have a better immune system, but of course they're going to grow better. A cow in better body condition will breed back better. That's been proven many times.
We deworm to get rid of the parasites for the performance, for the growth performance and to keep the health good on the cattle. The more healthier you have the cattle, the better they can face the challenges there of getting sick.
Timing is very important for treatment of parasites, and especially depending on the time of year. In the fall, usually you treat your cattle for parasites because they stop parasite transmission. Only about 5 to 10% of the parasites are actually found in the cow or the calf or the stocker calf. Most of them are out on pasture in fecal form or out on the grass. In the spring, usually people should treat for parasites at turnout. Now this is different. They need to work through their veterinarian or their animal health supplier and figure out the best timing to treat for parasites. And hopefully they use a dewormer that has a certain amount of persistency. That way they can continue keeping those animals parasite free for a period of time after turnout, because the minute you turn them out, they're going to start picking up parasites.
One tool producers can turn to in the fight against parasites is Cydectin Poron from Bayer Animal Health. Cydectin has a unique active ingredient that kills parasites longer and is available in 2 formulations.
The active ingredient in Cydectin is moxidectin, which the reason that's important is very unique in its properties. It's different than your other Poron dewormers. It's actually a different class of wormer. It gets in the fat, and it's very specific on many internal parasites that some of the other dewormers aren't as specific against. Since Cydectin Poron is lipophilic, that means it stays in the body longer. That's what makes it persistent, is its lipophilic properties, which is very important, especially in the spring and the summer when you want to kill parasites for a longer period of time. Persistency is important because it's going to decrease the number of treatments that you need, but actually it's going to extend your dewormer. If it lasts 28 days, that means you have 28 additional days of deworming with 1 dose. And it keeps those cattle parasite-free for a longer period of time.
We use Cydectin Poron because it's easy and it works. A lot of the Porons that we've used really don't seem to be very effective there, and Cydectin sure seems like it does the job.
There's 2 formulations of Cydectin. There's Cydectin Poron and Cydectin Injectable. Cydectin Poron comes in 5 easy-to-use volumes, and the injectable comes in just a 500 ml application of it. I know producers sometimes get confused about, well, should I use injectable or use Poron? A lot of it is their situation. If they have good facilities and that animal is actually going through a chute or it's being caught in a chute, then that's a good time to inject them. The Porons are more user-friendly. You can line a bunch of cattle up in an alleyway and use Poron dewormer.
Cydectin is an excellent product. It's probably as good as any that we've achieved in our parasite control.
Keeping parasites out of your herd helps keep more pounds on your calves, which means more money in your pocket.
That's how we make money, is by putting pounds on the cattle.
The biggest economic indicator in the cattle industry is pounds. By using Cydectin Poron, studies have shown that against non-treated animals, The Cydectin cattle gained 57 pounds versus the untreated cattle. At that time in the cattle market, that was a $70 increase or return on investment for using Cydectin. Weight gain's the key. Usually a producer's return on investment of deworming their cattle probably is at least 7 to 1 to even up to 10 to 1. For every dollar spent, they're going to get a huge return on investment. I'd take that any day of the week.
If you got all those things working, if your cows are breeding and your calves are gaining weight, your margins is getting better.
And healthier, better performing cattle are exactly what producers everywhere are aiming for. I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
For cattle producers, treating parasites in your herd is key to preventing production losses. For more information about parasite control techniques and proper use of Cydectin and Bayer's other products, visit BayerLivestock.com. Well, there's more of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen coming up. Stay with us.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
At Leachman Cattle, we're committed to building more profitable cattle. As a third-generation seed stock producer, our family has been in this business for over 80 years. Today, we have the best technology ever to build more profitable cattle. Our dollar profit index is a leader in the industry to help you balance all the traits that drive your bottom line. Give us a call or go to www.leachman to learn more.
Ad companies are always on the lookout for new inventions they can market for millions. On a trip to Cedarville a while back, Rachel and James told me a story that I immediately recognized for its mass marketing advertising potential. It seems Uncle Jack had diagnosed bilateral pink eye in one of his black bulls. I know, but it's their story. Uncle Jack decided to treat it with a big shot of antibiotic. Well, the bull was difficult to push, much less to get into a corral, so Uncle Jack figured if they could drive up next to it and administer the dose freehand, that would be the easy way. Well, they tried to, but the bull was too skittish. What to do? What to do? Just as fear is the father of fence chargers, and whacking your thumb is the stepfather of cussing, so is necessity the mother of invention. Uncle Jack set about constructing the plastic syringe injection extender. He used a 60cc plastic disposable syringe, 4 feet of large PVC pipe, 4.5 feet of smaller PVC pipe, hose clamps, baling wire, and duct tape. He taped the big PVC pipe to the syringe and then inserted the smaller PVC pipe inside the larger to act as a plunger, and voila! Can't you just see the carnival barker now demonstrating this syringe extender on sliced cantaloupe and an anesthetized polar bear? For the maiden run, they took the pickup. Rachel was driving and James was coaching as Uncle Jack leaned out of the pickup bed shouting directions. Closer, too fast, drop back, hard, go right, now! With the coolness of Captain Ahab harpooning a white whale, Jack drove home the syringe extender javelin. The blind bull pivoted perpendicular to the pickup, tore the side mirror off, and jerked Uncle Jack overboard. Gosh, I asked James, was the mirror the only thing he broke? No, said James. but that was the one we fixed. This is Baxter Black from Alton's there.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We've shared a lot of information with you today about the efforts by our industry leaders to help us weather this storm we're currently experiencing. I don't know about you, but for me, every article I pick up seems to create more questions than it actually answers. And I don't have many answers right now, but I do know this. The beef industry is full of resourceful and resilient people who have the courage, the competence, and the commitment to not just address, but overcome most any challenge, including the one we're experiencing today. So as springtime ushers in with it green grass and a new crop of baby calves, I hope it will also bring us a new sense of hope for the future of our industry. And with that, let's take a look at this week's Legacy Photos. As we close our show, I'll leave you with a final thought that may be worth remembering in these challenging and stressful times. It's a quote by Robert Friedman, who said, "Character is not made in times of crisis, it's only exhibited." As we look around us and see the mudslinging going on in our industry, I challenge all of us to take the high road and focus our time and energies on fixing the problem rather than fixing the blame. That's our time for now. I'm Kevin Ochsner, and I'll see you next week right here on RFD TV.